A silent hall, 14 feet of faded color, and a single moment captured on a wall in Milan that refuses to die. Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper is one of the most recognized images in the world. People know the gestures, the faces, the long table. But what most don't realize is that this scene was never meant to be a painting in the conventional sense. It was a code, a visual trap, designed to speak across centuries. For hundreds of years, scholars have picked it apart. Restorers have scraped its surface with scalpels. Scientists have scanned it with infrared beams. Every new layer reveals something stranger than the last, and yet no one has been able to pin down what Leonardo really left inside it. This isn't decoration. It isn't just biblical storytelling. It is a puzzle hidden in plain sight. A puzzle built out of silence, light, and geometry. And as technology peels away what time tried to erase, the picture forming inside those cracks is more dangerous than anything Leonardo ever wrote down. Make sure to like this video and subscribe right now, because you're about to step inside the room where Leonardo concealed his most dangerous experiment. The year is 1495. You walk into the dining hall of Santa Maria delle Grazie, a Dominican monastery in Milan. The room is plain, echoing with the scrape of wooden benches and the muted shuffle of robes. Monks eat in silence, their eyes falling on one long wall. And there, frozen in time, sit Jesus and his 12 apostles. At first glance, it looks like just another religious mural. But stare long enough, and something feels off. The faces are alive. The hands speak as much as the mouths. The room itself seems to lean toward the man at the center. It isn't simply a scene. It's a stage set, meticulously engineered to hold a hidden rhythm. Leonardo wasn't painting like his contemporaries. He wasn't content to copy scripture. He was dissecting it, rearranging it, encoding it. Every line, every gesture is intentional. Architecture becomes part of the theology. Shadows become words. And the strangest part? He never wrote down what he was doing. No notes explain why the apostles are grouped in threes, why Judas is isolated yet still inside the chaos, why the vanishing lines converge not only behind Christ's head, but toward other subtle points hidden in the composition. For centuries, people whispered that Leonardo smuggled forbidden knowledge into the mural. Some saw sacred geometry. Some saw blasphemy. Others claimed entire books had been concealed in brushstrokes and silence. But the truth runs deeper than anyone suspected. The answers were never in the colors. They were always in the structure. The code was the room itself. To understand why this painting exists at all, you have to understand the man who ordered it. Ludovico Sforza, Duke of Milan, a ruthless political operator, a patron of artists and engineers, and a man desperate to secure his legacy. Between 1495 and 1498, he commissioned Leonardo to cover the wall of the monastery's refectory with the most important scene in Christian history, the last meal before betrayal. But this was never just about piety. The mural faced the dining table, where the monks ate their daily bread. Every time they sat down, they reenacted the supper, their own bodies becoming part of the story. It was immersive art, long before cinema or theater, a direct fusion of sacred narrative and daily ritual. And for the Duke, it served another purpose: propaganda. By funding this masterpiece, Ludovico tied his family name to divine authority. His mausoleum was inside the same church. Every visitor would see the Sforza legacy literally framed by the face of Christ. Leonardo understood the weight of this commission. He placed Jesus dead center, bathed in light, framed by an open window that creates a perfect halo without a single brush stroke. Around him, 12 men explode in disbelief, leaning, pointing, shouting. They are grouped in threes, their chaos arranged with surgical precision. The symmetry is flawless, the mathematics invisible, the drama undeniable. It is storytelling in paint, propaganda in geometry, theology in architecture. And yet, hidden inside this triumph was a fatal decision that would nearly destroy everything Leonardo was trying to preserve. Leonardo chose not to paint in fresco. He wanted more than tradition could give him. He wanted control. Fresco was fast. Pigments were applied onto wet plaster, fusing as the wall dried. Once the plaster set, it became part of the building. Durable, nearly indestructible. But fresco was merciless. There was no time for revisions, no chance for subtle blending, no way to rework a face once the brush had touched the plaster. Leonardo refused those limitations. He sealed the wall with pitch and gesso, then painted slowly on top of the dried surface as if it were canvas. This gave him freedom. He could soften shadows, blend tones, layer details, revise again and again until each gesture was perfect. But the gamble was catastrophic, because the paint never bonded to the wall. It floated on the surface, vulnerable to moisture, to mold, to time itself. Within a few decades, flakes were falling. Within a century, the colors were ghostly shadows, and time wasn't the only enemy. Smoke from candles blackened it. Well-meaning restorers painted over missing sections with their own inventions. In the 17th century, builders hacked a doorway through the wall, slicing off the lower section of Christ's body without hesitation. The 20th century brought bombs. In 1943, Allied air raids obliterated most of the convent. The roof collapsed, debris rained down, and yet, somehow, the wall with the Last Supper survived, battered and exposed to the open air. The very method that allowed Leonardo to create something unlike anything else in history guaranteed its destruction. It was a masterpiece engineered to die. And yet, that fragility may have been part of the plan. Because within those flakes and scars, in the faint strokes barely clinging to plaster, something survived that wasn't meant to be erased. Something that technology, centuries later, would finally begin to uncover. By the late 20th century, the Last Supper was a ghost of itself. A mural barely clinging to the wall, its colors faded, its forms almost unrecognizable. Tourists came expecting Da Vinci's genius and found only shadows of what once was. But then came one of the most ambitious restoration projects in history. A rescue mission that would take more than 2 decades, using technology Leonardo could never have imagined, to bring the painting back from the brink and reveal secrets hidden beneath centuries of damage. In 1978, conservator Pinin Brambilla Barcelon began a restoration effort that would consume 21 years of her life. The challenge was immense. How do you recover a painting that was already half destroyed before she even touched it? Her team approached it like surgeons working on a patient who had been clinically dead for centuries. They used scalpels under microscopes to carefully lift away centuries of grime, soot, and amateur overpainting. What looked like solid color was often nothing more than someone else's guess, layered on top of Leonardo's vanished strokes. To separate truth from fiction, they turned to science. Infrared reflectography revealed underdrawings hidden beneath the surface. X-rays distinguished original brushstrokes from later repairs. Ultraviolet light exposed varnishes and glazes added long after Leonardo was gone. And within those layers, they began to glimpse something extraordinary. Leonardo's hand, subtle changes in the tilt of a head, the arc of a gesture, the set of an eye. These weren't accidents. They were pentimenti, deliberate adjustments made as Leonardo rethought the scene in real time. It was like peering directly into his mind. The restoration was controversial. Some critics argued it removed too much, leaving only fragments. Others insisted it went too far in repainting lost areas. But one thing was clear. For the first time in centuries, the room was breathing again. The apostles leaned, gestured, spoke in color instead of shadow. Today, climate controls keep the mural in a carefully monitored environment. Visitor numbers are limited to protect it from humidity and breath. The monks' dining hall has become a shrine, not just to faith, but to survival. With the dirt gone, a deeper question emerged. Because now, the figures were visible again, and their arrangement suggested something more than chaos. The placement of every hand and every face seemed deliberate. Leonardo wasn't painting randomness. He was telling a coded story in silence. Look closer. The apostles are not scattered randomly. Leonardo organizes them into 4 groups of 3, each cluster a microdrama exploding outward from the center. On the left, 3 men react in shock. One throws out his arms in disbelief. Another leans forward to protest, and a third pulls back in confusion. To Christ's right, Judas recoils into shadow, clutching a purse of silver. His head is lower than the others, his face half obscured, his body angled away, as if trying to slip into the background. Yet his hand stretches toward the same dish as Christ's, the biblical moment that seals his guilt. Peter, just behind him, grips a small knife. His face is tense, his posture aggressive, foreshadowing the violence he will later unleash in the Garden of Gethsemane. Thomas raises a single finger toward heaven, the gesture that centuries later would become his symbol of doubt. James the Greater throws up his hands, one palm to his mouth as if trying to stop words from spilling out. Philip leans forward, his hands pressed to his chest, pleading for understanding. Each gesture, each glance is calculated. Even the direction of their eyes pulls the viewer's attention in waves that crash back toward Christ. And then there are the copies. Leonardo's students reproduced the mural before it began to crumble, preserving poses that later restoration could not. These surviving sketches and replicas help modern scholars identify who is who, confirming Leonardo's precise arrangement of the table. But it's not just about names. The geometry of the scene reveals something deeper. The apostles are positioned like pieces on a chessboard, each movement advancing a narrative you can't hear but can feel. Which brings us to the figure who has caused more controversy than all the others combined. The figure seated immediately to Christ's right, a controversy that would eventually lead to one of the most stunning revelations in art history. For centuries, no one questioned it. That figure was the Apostle John, young, beardless, gentle, often shown with delicate features in Renaissance art. But then came a claim so bold it split the world in 2. Some insisted that John wasn't John at all, that Leonardo had painted Mary Magdalene in disguise, sitting at the right hand of Christ, her body forming a mirror image with his in a V-shape many saw as a symbol of union. This wasn't just speculation. Best-selling books seized on the idea. Films turned it into global spectacle. Suddenly, what had been a monastery mural became the centerpiece of a conspiracy theory stretching from Leonardo to the Vatican. Bloodlines, secret gospels, hidden truths the church never wanted revealed. The argument was simple. The figure's long hair, tilted neck, and almost feminine softness were too striking to ignore. Side by side, Christ and this figure seemed less master and disciple and more bride and groom. But scholars fought back hard. Art historians pointed out that Leonardo often painted young men with gentle, feminine features. His drawings are filled with androgynous figures, a stylistic hallmark, not a code. Even more damning, workshop copies made by Leonardo's own students clearly identified the figure as John, not Mary. Infrared scans revealed underdrawings consistent with male anatomy. Every piece of documented evidence tied the figure to the traditional disciple. And yet, the debate refused to die. Because while the experts declared the matter closed, the public couldn't look away. Once the idea was planted, it was impossible to unsee. Was Leonardo hiding a forbidden truth in plain sight? Or had centuries of myth-making twisted a simple gesture into a global controversy? What no one expected was that centuries later, new technology would reopen the question, not with speculation, not with conspiracy, but with data. The controversy should have ended decades ago, but the world refused to let the theory die. Pop culture wouldn't let the theory die. Novels sold millions. Films reached global audiences. The Mary Magdalene theory became mainstream belief, but scholars had evidence. Workshop copies from Leonardo's own students showed John, not Mary. Advanced imaging revealed male anatomy beneath the paint. Case closed. Or so they thought, because just when the debate appeared finally buried, a new force reawakened it. Not a novelist, not a conspiracy theorist, but a machine. For centuries, the human eye had reached its limits. Even the most powerful microscopes and imaging tools depended on human interpretation. But AI doesn't interpret the way we do. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't see what it expects to see. It processes everything, every pixel, every angle, every line of force across a canvas with ruthless precision. Because in 2023, researchers fed the mural into an advanced AI system. Not just any AI, a machine trained specifically to analyze Renaissance art. Every pixel was mapped, every brushstroke measured, every geometric relationship calculated. The AI processed data no human eye could see. High-resolution scans, multispectral imaging, X-ray penetration, ultraviolet mapping. What it found wasn't random. It was intentional. 3 specific anomalies buried beneath the surface. 3 clues Leonardo drew, then altered, but never erased. The machine uncovered something that changed everything. First, a hidden jawline. Infrared revealed Leonardo's original draft beneath the surface. The figure beside Jesus once had sharper, more angular features. Leonardo softened them in the final version. But why? Second, a redesigned hand. Near Judas, the AI detected an earlier gesture, compact and tight. Leonardo stretched the fingers longer, the exact style found in studio copies, a deliberate connection. Third, the invisible arc. Behind Jesus, almost undetectable, the system found Leonardo's original planning line. It connected 3 figures, Jesus, John, and Judas, a triangle of divine will. This wasn't decoration, this was code. When the researchers mapped the axis back onto Leonardo's other works, a pattern emerged. The same compositional trick appeared in several of his paintings, guiding the viewer's eye not to what was obvious, but to what was concealed. Leonardo was notorious for embedding layers of meaning in mathematics, proportion, and perspective. The axis in the Last Supper wasn't random. It was part of his earliest planning. And suddenly, the debate roared back to life. Because if Leonardo left this hidden geometry beneath the surface, connecting Jesus, John, and another figure across the table, what did it mean? Why would he build an invisible triangle, only to obscure it in the final version? And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as we are, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because what the AI revealed next will completely change how you see this masterpiece. The machine's discovery of an invisible arc had left scholars stunned, but when the AI reconstructed the geometry in full, it revealed something even more profound, an axis of intention. This was no random line. It wasn't merely a compositional guide. The arc, when mapped precisely, created a visual pathway. Disciple to Jesus, Jesus to Judas. Three figures tied together not by chance, but by a deliberate thread of geometry. Every gesture fell into alignment. The tilt of a head, the curve of a shoulder, the reach of a hand, all pointed the viewer's gaze along this hidden track. First toward the beloved disciple, seated in serene devotion. Then to Jesus, who radiates stillness at the center. And finally, to Judas, the betrayer, his body recoiling even as his hand tightens around the purse. It was a story told not in words, but in sightlines. A choreography of betrayal written in paint. Workshop copies confirmed the finding. Even in versions created by Leonardo's students, the same compositional thread persisted. It was as if the master himself had imprinted this axis into the DNA of the mural, ensuring that no matter how much damage time inflicted, the geometry of the story would survive. Leonardo was encoding more than art. He was embedding narrative into mathematics, a silent sermon in perspective lines, a geometry of destiny. But that was only the beginning. The AI then turned its attention to light and shadow. Using spectral imaging, it reconstructed how the pigments would have looked before centuries of fading and overpainting. What it revealed was a dialogue hidden beneath the surface. Facial scans across the disciples confirmed what historians had long argued. Every figure aligned with male anatomical templates from Leonardo's portraits and sketches. Bone structure, proportions, and musculature all fit. There was no Magdalene in disguise. And yet something lingered, because while the forms were anatomically male, the AI found subtle softness in certain features, deliberate choices by Leonardo to blur the boundary between masculine and feminine. The contours of John's face, the tilt of Philip's head, even the curve of Thomas's questioning hand, they were suffused with ambiguity. Not enough to confuse identity, but enough to alter meaning. Why? Perhaps Leonardo wanted to highlight innocence, youth, or spiritual devotion. Perhaps he sought to portray purity not in rigid masculinity, but in androgynous grace. Whatever the reason, the effect was unmistakable. These figures became more than individuals. They became symbols, embodying archetypes beyond gender. Pigment maps showed that Leonardo layered these subtleties with exquisite care. Beneath centuries of repainting, his original strokes still lingered, preserving his intention like a coded message beneath the noise. The softness was not accident, it was design, and it transformed the painting's meaning. The Last Supper was no longer just a frozen moment, a static depiction of shock as Jesus announces betrayal. Instead, the AI revealed it as a sequence, a narrative unfolding through carefully planned shifts in gesture, light, and geometry. Each disciple reacts not simultaneously, but as though in a wave. Doubt, fear, anger, devotion all flow outward from Christ at the center like ripples spreading across water. It was cinema before cinema existed. Leonardo wasn't painting a moment in time. He was coding movement, emotion, and story into stillness. And then came the final revelation. When the AI reconstructed the complete visual axis, light, shadow, geometry, and gesture, the painting revealed itself as something far greater than a scene of betrayal. It was a map At its heart stood the axis of three: John, Jesus, Judas, the beloved, the Savior, the betrayer, bound together in a triangle of divine will, not separated but unified. 3 points of a single statement. John, symbol of devotion, innocence, and love. Judas, symbol of betrayal, greed, and fall. Jesus, binding them both, embodying sacrifice that transforms darkness into salvation. This was Leonardo's secret. The painting was not simply about the night betrayal was announced. It was about the eternal relationship between loyalty, betrayal, and redemption. A theological truth rendered not in words, but in mathematics, optics, and pigment. The AI had not rewritten history. It had only removed the noise, peeling back the centuries to show what Leonardo had hidden in plain sight. His silent sermon, preserved in line and light, now stood revealed. The debates of centuries, Magdalene or John, conspiracy or orthodoxy, seemed almost irrelevant. The truth was bigger than either side. Leonardo had created not just a painting, but a code, a map of choices, relationships, and divine will. He fused art, science, and faith into a single vision that still whispers across the centuries. The final irony: for years, conspiracy theorists had claimed the church suppressed Leonardo's hidden messages. But the reality was stranger. The church didn't need to hide it. It was right there all along, invisible to the untrained eye, waiting for the right tools, waiting for us. And so the Last Supper speaks again, not with brushstrokes, not with pigment, but with geometry, with light, with silence. Leonardo's message endures, reminding us that truth, like light itself, is always there, if you know where to look.